Okay, I want to talk about Bameh Madlikin and the Hasidic substitution of Bameh Madlikin for Kegavna. So I want to first start with a story. There's a tshuva sefer called Hillel Omer. Was published I think in the 1940s maybe, from a Paisik who had smicha from the Marsham. And he writes in a tshuva, he writes over here a shaila. They sent him a shaila from a shul in Ramat Gan. And the shaila was about changing the nusach. And before he starts standing the shaila of changing the nusach in the shul in Ramat Gan, he says, I want to tell you over a story, he says, from my Rebbe, the Marsham, who he had smicha from, who told him a story about the Shaila Meshiv. And the story goes as follows. The Shaila Meshiv was the Rav in Lemberg, in Lvov, and he would vacation in Skolya. Skolya was in the Transylvanian mountains. It was a beautiful climate. And the Olam in Lvov, B'chlal, the Tzibur in Lvov would vacation in Skolya. Now, the Kehila in Skolya was a small Chassidish Kehila, maybe a few dozen or a few low hundreds families. They davened Nusach Sfard, and Friday night they said Kegavna instead of Bameh Madlikin, and they said V'yatzmach Borkaneh instead of the Nusach Ashkenaz Kaddish. But in the summer months, when this big influx of Jews from Lvov would show up, they would want to change the Nusach and make it more matim to what they were used to at home. They were doing Nusach Ashkenaz still, and they wanted Nusach Ashkenaz should be the Nusach. And when they got up to V'yatzmach Borkaneh, there was a little elbow here and there, and people shushking each other. When they got up to Madlik and Kegavna, some elbows here and there, people trying to get their way. Now the Shaila Meshiv was in the tzibur there. He was sitting through the davening. He sat silently. He didn't participate in any of this jostling for control over the shul. At the end of davening, a group from the Skolya home team and a group from the Lvov visiting team came to the Shaila Meshiv and they said, "No, Yilam Dein Rabbeinu, what's the right thing to do over here?" So he tells them, "I'll tell you the truth." He says, what happens is like this: the Yetzer Hara comes to vacation in Skolya in the summer also. The Satan comes here to vacation with everybody else. And when he comes to a shul and he sees there's some Chassidish Yidden and there's some not Chassidish Yidden and you're all here together, he says, let me see what I could do over here by Bameh Madlikin. How could I light this up? Maybe I could get everybody to fight a little bit. And then he tells the other group, he says, Kegavna, just like they're doing, you should do also. Mirror it. Whatever they're doing, do back to them. He says, but really, we have to wait to V'yatzmach Borkaneh, when Mashiach will come, and then we'll know what the right way is and everybody will have the right thing. So then the Shaila Meshiv looked around and he says, what I told you now was a Chassidish Torah, to make the Skolya Olam happy. Now I'm going to tell you a psak for the Olam from Lvov. It says the psak is that the minig of the shul stays the way it is. You can't come on summer vacation and change the minig. The minig in Skolya is to do like that, so that's how it stays. But you should adhere to your minig and say Bameh Madlikin quietly on your own without disturbing the shul. And then he said, he says, this is for both of you. And if chas v'shalom, one group by mistake says like the other person, if by mistake a Bameh Madlikin Jew says Kegavna, or vice versa, that Aveira I absorb. I'll take that for you. The Gehenim you're going to get by mistake saying the wrong one, I take that off both of you. This is the Shaila Meshiv's psak in Skolya in the summer. So the Marsham, when he would give smicha to potential rabbanim, to young talmidim, he would tell them this is what a paisik has to aspire for. Like you have to aspire to be a paisik like Shaila Meshiv that can answer every segment of the Shaila in this manner. So Taka Kegavna Bameh Madlikin is a flashpoint in Chassidish and Misnagdish minhagim. But, like the Shaila Meshiv saying, the Aveira of Chalila by mistake saying Kegavna versus Bameh Madlikin, or the other way around, is not, you don't have anything to worry about. So now what is the core minig? And we'll work from there. So the Shulchan Aruch brings down as follows. The Mechaber says, Noigin Leimer Perik Bameh Madlikin, in Siman Reish Ayin. The Mechaber says, the minig is to say Perik Bameh Madlikin, Vasfardim Oimunoi say Kodim Tfilas Arvis V'hu Nothing. The Mechaber says the minig of the Sfardim is to say it before Ma'ariv, and that's the proper way to do it. Now, what the Mechaber is alluding to is that the minig Ashkenaz HaKadum, the minig that's, let's say, in the Siddur of Amram Goyin and the other Goyinim, is to say Bameh Madlikin at the end of Ma'ariv. Not the way we do. We do it right after Kabbalah Shabbos. The way to say Bameh Madlikin was the end of Ma'ariv. The Svardish minig, the Mechaber says, was to say it before Tfilas Ma'ariv, and says the Mechaber, that's the right way. So what's the machlekes over here about? So the reason to say Bameh Madlikin after Ma'ariv was similar to Magen Avos. It was a way to schlep out davening. People got to davening late. Shul was not always in the most built-up area of town. Friday night is a time for mazikim to really thrive. And you don't want people walking home from shul alone, so you schlep out davening. And like that, someone who came late will skip Bameh Madlikin, will skip Magen Avos, and someone who got there in time will say the extra tefillos and everybody's fine. So the original minig, the minig Ashkenaz HaKadim that the Mechaber is referring to, was to say it after Ma'ariv, just to schlep out davening. But Lamaisa, if you pay attention to the words, we're talking about the Mishnayos that talk about, how to be prepared for Shabbos, right? But Ma'amad Likin ends off with Isartim Miraftim Likos Haner, the instructions of Ben Hashmashas. So Mamela said to Beis Yosef in the Torah, Tzim Rishayim, Beis Yosef comments, Beis Yosef says it doesn't make any sense to say it at the end of Ma'ariv. At the end of Ma'ariv, it's a Mubas Liyuchaluskin. It's done. Whatever happened, happened. You can't fix it. It's over. So you got to say it before Ma'ariv, so you have a chance to go undo whatever mistake could have happened before Shabbos. Not like the original reason of saying it just to Shlevat Davening. Now the Bach says that even so, there could still be a reason, because if you lit shemen if you lit your candles with the wrong oil, you'll know what type of halachas to keep, fine, whatever. But Yich Shiyah, the minig originally was to Shlevat Davening, and then the minig became about people knowing what to do. Now, the Shlach Kaddish brings down that there's a secret Kabbalistic reason for saying B'mem Adlikin as well. Now, so he doesn't specify before or after. Yeah, to say B'mem Adlikin.
Is that the original source?
So 1 second. So meaning, if you say, I'll tell you why the Shla is important. Because if you say like the reason of the Ga'inim, that it's to Shlep out davening and v'chulu, so then it becomes kind of obsolete. Meaning, there's no real purpose in Shlepping out davening. Everybody lives in a shul nearby. You finish when you finish, you go home. Zikr, if you say it in the middle of davening, it doesn't do anything for anybody. The times are very set, it becomes a little bit obsolete. The Shla says that there's like a secret Kabbalistic reason, so then it's much harder to retire something that has some sort of secret reason. So what is the secret reason of the Shla? So in the Sefer Hiserus Tshuva from some Sefer's grandson, the Erlei Rav, the first Erlei Rav, the Hiserus Tshuva, he writes as follows, and this is a fascinating thing. He says, "Atam Neisif Niflam and Hagen Shei Yisrael Leimer B'Leil Shabbos Kodesh Perak Mishnayos Memad Likin." He says as follows. The Arizal says, "Shebachol Yom sheyashkem adam habayker yehei tchilas limud perak Mishnayos." The Arizal says, "Ergitzvu," that when a person wakes up in the morning, the first thing he should learn is a perak of Mishnayos. Why? Ki al yidei zeh misyasheves haneshama b'gufei. The Arizal says the neshama that's in a person gets comfortable when you learn Mishnayos. Mishnayos seems to correspond. We know Mishnah, neshama. It's really the same. It's the same. That's why for a dead person we learn Mishnayos. Mishnayos settles the neshama. This is what the Arizal says. So says the Yisera Tshuva. So on Shabbos, when a person gets an Neshama Yisera, right, when Shabbos begins, we instruct him to say a parak of Mishnayos, so that his Neshama should be settled. Why B'mem Adlikin? If you're going to learn a parak of Mishnayos already, let it at least be something that has to do with Hadlakas Neiris. It's Hadlakas Neiris time. It's by coincidence. Meaning, the Shla seems to be alluding to this reason, and this is what the Yisera Tshuva says, that there's something to do with the Neshama Yisera that came for Shabbos. Rather, why not do this Kapitel Mishnayos if you're doing a Kapitel Mishnayos already? Why do a different one? Incidentally, Reb Pinchas of Karetz, one of the early Chassidish rabbis, he said, and I'm surprised that this didn't keep the Chassidim, I'm surprised this didn't keep more people saying B'mem Adlikin. He says saying B'mem Adlikin on Shabbos is a school for Parnasa. And he does a whole Rashi Tevis of the word, he does Perak Haner. I'm not doing this, but a whole Rashi Tevis of how saying the Perak Haner is a school for Parnasa. And therefore, the secret reason that the Shla is referring to of it saying B'mem Adlikin has to do with the school of Parnasa, not to do with the Neshama Yisera. L'maisa, the Arizal himself did not say B'mem Adlikin. Although the Mechaber and the Ramah and the Minig, the Beis Yosef, the Bach, the Magen Avram, all the Paiskim say B'mem Adlikin. The Shabur passings like that. The Arizal did not say B'mem Adlikin. It wasn't his nusach to say it. We don't know why. Hagam, the Arizal, Grada was held it was very important to learn Mishnayos on Shabbos. So, interestingly, that the reason of Mishnayos, which is like Kilu Gebaitan and Arizal, the Arizal held of, but in a different way. Because the Arizal held that a person should learn, it's a little harder to do, maybe that's why this didn't catch on. The Arizal held that you should learn 8 prakim of Mishnayos by every Suda. Because the Masechta Shabbos has 24 prakim. If you do 8 by each Suda, over the Shalosh Sudas, you finish all Mishnayos. So, 8 per Suda. That was the Arizal. And the Arizal held that it was important to learn that on Shabbos. Mishnayos, Shabbos had some sort of connection, and it was important, but not exactly the B'mem Adlikin. Now, so Stam, this Mishnayos, I digress for a second. In the Inyan of Limud Mishnayos, that Mishnah is like such a chashav limud, and that Mishnah is something that's so important to learn. It happens to be, we spoke a little bit about this last week with the Beis Yosef and the Tikkun Leil Shavuos, how they had a Giloy how the Beis Yosef and Rosh Shlomo Alkavitz had a Giloy while they were learning Mishnayos together. So the Beis Yosef and Magid Misharim elsewhere, he has a whole shtickle over here. He says where he writes how important it is and how happy it makes HaKadosh Baruch Hu when a person learns Mishnayos the Chafetz Chaim in one of his svarim, like Teres Habayis, what the Chafetz Chaim talks about just what a person's regular learning consumption should be. He brings down the Beis Yosef that a person should be makbid to learn Mishnayos every day, even if he's holding by learning much more than them. Even a person who's learning much more than Mishnayos should be makbid to learn Mishnayos every day. So Liman of Mishnayos is Taka Groisa Inyan, and it's Yitachan, that's what the Shla is referring to, and the Arizal certainly held that was an Inyan, even in regards to Shabbos, just not, Dafka B'mem Avlikin on Shabbos. Now, the minute to say Kigavna, the Shtikl Zayar of Kigavna, that is Taka, interestingly, a uniquely Hasidish minig. Meaning even Svardim, other Mekubalim, as far as I know, other Mekubal, like lines of Mekubalim and Kabbalistic Tfilas and stuff like that, do not say Kigavna. Kigavna is a uniquely Hasidish minig. Now, interestingly enough, it seems the Baal Shem Tov and the early Chassidim did not say Kigavna. So, where does Kigavna come from? So, in Brod there was a klois, right? The famous Brod klois, like maybe the first kailul. The Brod klois, which was like what do you call it? Like an incubator for Gedei Hadar. The Nadi Yehuda learned there, the Shar Ephraim learned there, Shlomo Kluger learned there. I mean, it was like an incubator for Gedei Hadar. Also had a big propensity towards Kabbalah. They had a lot of Mekubalim who learned in the Brod klois in the early days, and interestingly, the Mekubalim of the Brod klois were very anti-Hasidish. There's a lot of kolkairas and like charamim that the Brother Klois put out against the early Hasidim, which was written by Mekubalim in the Brother Klois. So they're a different stream. But some of the early Sidurim that were published by some members of the Brother Klois included Kigavna. They had this tefillah of Kigavna in there. So it's seemingly the idea of inserting this shtikl zayir of Kigavna as like an entryway, a gateway into Shabbos, came from the Brother Klois. It did not come from the Hasidim like the Baal Shem Tov. Later on, the Talmidim of the Besh, incorporated this in the Tefillah, but at the time the Baal Tanya put out a Siddur, in the Baal Tanya Siddur, Kigavna is there instead of B'mem Adlikin. Now, so the interestingly is that there is a story brought down in the Shifchei HaBesh. Now, I don't know if this is a true story or not. The Shifchei HaBesh was written much, much later than the Baal Shem Tov's actual lifetime, so it's hard to know, how true it is. But there's a story in the Shifchei HaBesh that the Besh was one time in a town together with a few of his Hasidim, and there was not enough Jews there to have a minyan, Kabbalah Shabbos, and they weren't going to be able to say Baruch Hu. Now, the end of the Kigavna ends off, it ends off, Kedein Shirusa Ditzleisa Devarchan Levachedveva, V'nehir Da'ampin V'leimar Baruch Hu. So, a trick how to say Baruch Hu when you don't have a minyan and you want to say Baruch Hu anyhow, is to read this Shtikl Zayar. So the Baal Shem Tov, when he was in this town and he didn't have a minyan, he read this Shtikl Zayar and he said, V'nehir Da'ampin V'leimar Baruch Hu, and they all said Baruch Hu. So from there, maybe they found like an early kernel of this minig, but Baker, this is a minig that caught on a little bit later by the Chassidim, and today it's something I think that only Chassidim, maybe Nusach Svard already today took it also, meaning, but originally it was only a Chassidish minig to say Kigavna. Now, the shaila is about saying tefillas from the Zayar B'chlal and about saying tefillas that are in Lashon Aramish. The Gemara in Shabbos says, Amar of Yehuda, that we don't say tefillas in a Lashon of Aramish because the Malachim don't understand it and they can't bring it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And therefore we don't say it in that language. So what's this exception? Now, the Mashal Kaddish is in Aramaic, right? Kaddish is in Aramaic. That seems to be some sort of exception. Brich Shmei is in Aramaic. Brich Shmei is, what do you say? Maybe. I'm not sure. Yeah. Yeah, you can pork and goes together. Yeah, exactly. So Brich Shmei. So what's the cheshbon? So there's a rush. The rush in Madani Melech and Brachas in the second parak, when he handles Brich Shmei is an earlier minig. Brich Shmei is also a later addition to the Siddur, but not as late as Kigavna. Brich Shmei was added in, let's say, 500 years ago. Brich Shmei, also from the Zayar. It's also a straight Shikl Zayar that says, Pasach of Kadetziu Sifrei. We leave out the first line, like Kadetziu Sifrei Torah, Pasach of Shimon va'amar Brich Shmei. So mainly we say it by Psicha of the Ar, and that's the Shikl Zayar. So Brich Shmei is new. So the Rosh in Madani Melech in the second parak of Brachas, the Rosh has this Yisoid, and l'chayr that's how Kigavna fits in also, is that the only time that we could say tefillas in Aramaic and we don't care that the Malachim can't understand it is by something that includes a psichas shar. When the gates are open, then kaviyachol, you're talking more directly to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and you're able to disregard, the fact that the Malachim can't intercede and can't bring it to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Kaddish, when we're being Mamlech HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that's like direct. You don't need anybody's intercession. When the Aron HaKodesh is open, Vayibin Sayah Aron, it's a Psichas Sha'arim, you could say the Tefillah of Brich Shmei. That's what the Rosh is referring to. So seemingly, Shabbos, when there's like this transition from Shabbos into the week, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu and Klal Yisrael, it's like a chasana, it's a psicha of sorts. The Mekubalim felt it was an opportune time to insert a tefillah of desire, insert a tefillah in Aramaic that would fit in over here, and as opposed to the rest of davening, which is not in Aramaic. So which part of Ataras Nedarim is in Aramaic? It's not a tefillah, it's an announcement, really. I don't know, I'm not sure. I mean, you could easily stretch, Yom Kippur, it's whatever, we can work on that. I don't know, it's interesting. Now, just I'll note that to be Messiah with what we started with, the Aruch HaShulchan, the Mishnah Berurah and Siman Reish Ayin only brings down the meaning of B'memad Likin, it doesn't bring Kegavna at all. The Aruch HaShulchan and Siman Reish Ayin, when he brings down these minhagim, the Aruch HaShulchan says that he brings all the different timim to say B'memad Likin. He explains why maybe they're a little bit obsolete today, why the timim don't really apply. He doesn't bring the Shla and the Kabbalistic timim. And then he says, Lefichach le'nagu l'daktik b'kach, וכבר כסבנו בסימן ר' ס"ז שיש אצלנו מי שאין אומרים כלל בממד ליקן, אלא mayim מהזוהר פרשת תרומה כגבנה וכולו עין שם והכל מטעם שברנו. So the Aruch HaShulchan is much more, laissez-faire about it. He's very open-minded about this. Like he says, b'memad likin, the sivos b'memad likin are a little bit obsolete. They're not so negay anymore. The Kabbalistic timing he's not so partial to b'chlal, and therefore he says the minig developed that some people say kegavna, some people say b'memad likin. So to be Messiah with what we started with the Shalom Eshev, l'chayra, if by mistake anybody says the wrong one, I think they have what the Bisay Machan. All right.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.